Time for the newspaper review. Sally and I are going to take a look at the stories making headlines. Let us begin with Gulf News, which is leading with the situation in Gaza. Israel is saying that its ground forces are ready for an offensive. The Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is preparing to ask the UN for international protection. US prosecutors are offering immunity deals to junior foreign exchange traders in London in exchange for information about their superiors in an alleged currency market manipulation investigation. That's in today's Financial Times. The business section of the Daily Telegraph has a warning from a Swiss-based financial watchdog that the world's economy is more fragile than before the great crash of 2007. The Times shows World Cup champions Germany raising their trophy in celebration. Of course, many newspapers as well. But Germany beat Argentina 1-0 in extra time at Maracana in Rio. In case you haven't heard that already. You've been somewhere if you haven't heard it. The Archbishop of Canterbury insists that he cannot impose women bishops on the Church of England if the vote doesn't pass later. The Daily Telegraph reports that it is expected to be a very close vote. In the meantime, the paper says that the commandment, thou shalt not lie, and of course the other 7 could be enforced upon newly elected MPs, or at least they need to learn them, who are joining the political scene in the UK. They include selfishness, integrity and accountability. Of course, they should be told about these things. Cornelia Meyer is the CEO of business consultancy group MRL Corporation and joins us. Hello, Cornelia.
Morning.
Good
morning.
We are reporting that 172 Palestinians have been killed now from Israeli airstrikes. The Gulf News is reporting that Israeli ground forces are ready for an offensive. We're just also talking about Mahmoud Abbas ready to ask the UN for international protection.
It's absolutely gut-wrenching. If you look at it, I mean, the Gaza Strip, a very small territory with a lot of people living in it, no free movement, no free access, even in the best of times. And now this, it is very, very gut-wrenching if you live there. The Israelis obviously throwing rockets at Israel is also not acceptable. But what you see is that everybody who has a foreign passport, Norwegian, Swiss, American, who lives in the Gaza Strip, who is Palestinian, leaves. And the ones, again, the lowest of the low, are just left there. And that's you know, hatred begets hatred and violence begets violence. I just hope that somehow one can get out of that spiral of violence.
Well, and we'll obviously keep a very close eye on what's happening there on BBC World News. But let's move on to the Financial Times.
Yeah, this is an interesting story. US offering immunity to junior foreign exchange traders in return for information. What do you make of this story?
Well, that the DOJ is getting very serious. You saw that the Swiss and the Germans were quite serious about looking at this foreign exchange fixing scandal. You know, if you look at it, it's the biggest market that there is. It's $5.3 trillion a day, the market. It's huge, because everything, if you trade, if you have financial transactions, for everything you need to convert currency.
It's funny because a lot of people that I talk to, you know, guests on our paper review who work in the city are saying this is the biggie.
Yes, absolutely.
The foreign
much bigger than LIBOR. Much bigger than LIBOR.
Massive. And it goes to show that they are willing to go to many lengths to find out the information that they believe is there.
Absolutely, and I think it's for the good of all of us, because we don't want, you know, we don't want rigging of something as fundamental as foreign exchange.
What could it do if it turns out to be what we all fear, i.e. lots of manipulation, lots of wrongdoing? What could this do to the markets?
Well, what it would do to the markets, it will be very bad for bank shares. So this is not a good time to be in bank shares, but it will also it will make the market more the foreign exchange market more transparent and cleaner in the long run. In the short run, you know, when you take medicine, it sometimes tastes bitter. And it will get a lot of fines. Look, $5.8 billion was the fine for LIBOR. So, and it's the same again. It's again the UBSs of this world. It's the very same banks that we had a problem with LIBOR. We have a problem with this.
Let's move on to the business section of the Daily Telegraph. This is quite a worrying headline, in my opinion. World's economy is more fragile than before the great crash of 2007. And it's quite a detailed piece taking a look at all how we are now compared to before 2007, and there are extra factors adding to this fragility. Do you believe that?
I believe we are very fragile. I'm not sure what's happened is we had a deleveraging in the private sector, in the banking industry, and the public sector, the governments have levered up. So we have record debt levels in the public sector. So there is nobody left to be a lender of last resort. At the same time, we've gone down with interest rates so low that we don't have to lever again for the next crisis. We can't go lower with interest rates.
We knew, didn't we, that the public sector would be highly indebted, though, didn't we? That should have been something that we were prepared for. Public borrowing would have been much higher.
We know that now, but you know, we knew that the private sector was highly indebted and that we had issues in the banking system, and the crisis still happened.
Just explain who's making this warning and how influential.
It's the Bank of International Settlement. They're the regulator / central bank of the central banks, so they really get access to all the public data like nobody else.
Should heed.
And you know, last time around in 2008, they said, look, it's in 2007, they foresaw the crisis in 2008 and said, look, something bad is happening, and they were sort of laughed down. This time, they really criticized the low interest rates, and I'm with them. At some stage, we have to go up just to have that lever again.
I mean, it's been warning a lot, because a couple of weeks ago, in its annual report, it was warning about volatility in the equity markets as well. But another factor, I mentioned there were so many different factors. One of the BIS is now mentioning is that emerging economies, and this is what wasn't happening before 2007, more emerging economies are having debt problems and are succumbing perhaps to private credit. They have their own private
credit crunches. They're very, very bearish on China. I would not be quite that bearish, because we should also bear in mind that China has $6 trillion worth of foreign reserves, and that's quite a big piggy bank.
It is quite a nice piggy bank. I wouldn't mind one like that. Let's have a look at the Times. World Cup. Cornelia, were you watching? It says ugliness gave way in the end to beauty. Lots of statistics here as to why this was a bit of a outstanding World Cup. Your view? I
was watching yesterday because I knew I was coming on today. I'm more sort of a cricket / rugby person than a football person, but it seems it does, as we discussed a little bit earlier, it seems to bring people together. And what I was very impressed was when the Germans won against the Brazilians, which was very bad for Brazil. They had been coached very well. They were very demure. They were not as jubilant as they are now. And which was good, because they were in the host country and they gave credence. But it was as this paper says and as experts tell me, it was a very good World Cup.
It was a good. Well, I enjoyed it, but the match last night was very good. Once it all got going, once we got into extra time.
It was interesting. It was a bit of a cliffhanger. Even I, who is not into football, was
getting very. He was on the edge of her seat.
Yes, and we're suffering for the lack of sleep this morning, perhaps. Important vote today. 2 years ago, the Church of England General Synod voted against having women bishops. It's expected today that perhaps it will tilt in the favour of women. Your view?
Well, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Mr. Welby, was on the BBC yesterday and said, look, he strongly endorsed the vote pro women bishops. Obviously, it was a democratic process, so he, if the Synod decides against it, there's nothing he can do. So he's being a good chief executive, making sure that people feel empowered. But it would be really high time, and it would be great if it happened.
I remember last time it didn't happen. There was quite a shock reaction to that. Yes. It was really thought that last time it would go through.
It was a tight vote last time.
We'll see what happens.
But you can become a vicar as a woman, but you can't become a bishop. It's not fair not to have full career opportunities in this day and age.
Now, in the meantime, should the MPs learn it says the 7 commandments.
Yes, I thought there were 10.
There's 10 commandments. Yeah, but there's a view. I mean, the shalt not murder. Yeah. I guess they don't.
No, they have selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership.
They have to learn those, do they?
I thought they need to be reminded that these exist. And I know that the civil service abides very much. Our civil service very much abides by these rules. It would be very good.
That's a very big comment. How do you know the whole civil service abides by these rules.
Well, they're taught these rules, so I assume there'll be good people.
Good behaviour within the civil service.
I assume there will be also assessed on these. They will be assessed on whether they live up to them. Whereas if you're an MP, you're not assessed to it. So maybe you should be reminded that this is really what you should live up to.
Got to worry if your MP doesn't know about these rules, don't you? Okay, Cornelia, thank you so much. Cornelia Meyer there. Sally and I will see you very, very soon. Have a good day.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.